He spent $3 on a 19-year-old virgin bride, but when the courageous cowboy knelt, she let out a cry. Not 300, just three. Merchants walked past it without slowing down. Some laughed, some shook their heads, others muttered quiet warnings. A first bond colonial partner, untested, untrained, from a dying species. Useless, they said. Elia's crow stopped walking. He was tall, dust-covered, and moved like someone who had lived most of his life under open skies. His boots were real leather, not synth. His coat was old, patched, and burned at the edges from places most people avoided. A plasma rifle rested on his back, quiet but ready. He looked at the contract again. Age, 19 standard cycles. Status, Virgin World native, meaning never off-world. Bond level first. Survival rating, low. The word virgin meant nothing romantic in the galaxy. It meant untouched by space, untouched by trade, untouched by politics. It meant fragile. It meant risky. A merchant nearby snorted. Human, the insect-like trader said, clicking its mandibles. That one will not last a month. You will lose your credits and your time. Elias didn't answer. He had seen maps others refused to look at. Dead worlds, border planets, places where machines still waited and old wars had not finished echoing. He knew what risk looked like. 3 credits was nothing, but the contract was not cheap because of money. It was cheap because no one wanted the responsibility. Elias reached out and pressed his thumb to the light. The contract sealed with a soft tone. Across the market, several heads turned. Someone laughed, someone cursed. Someone whispered, "A human really did it." Sally did not know what the sound meant. She stood inside a narrow chamber made of white alloy and soft light. The air smelled clean, but unfamiliar. Her hands trembled as she held them close to her chest. She had been told not to move until the bond activated. She had been told many things. They said the bonded one would own her. They said humans were loud and violent. They said once the bond was sealed, there was no escape. She believed them. She had cried quietly when the elders marked her name. She had cried again when the ship lifted from her homeworld, leaving behind pale forests and slow rivers that glowed at night. Now she waited. The door slid open. A human stood there. He was larger than she expected. Not wider but longer, like he had been stretched by gravity and hard living. His hair was dark, touched with gray. His face carried lines that told stories she could not read. He did not smile, but he did not look angry either. He stopped at the doorway as if unsure whether to step closer. "Name's Elias Crow," he said. His voice was low, calm, not sharp. Sally did not answer. Her translator hummed in her ear, struggling with the sounds. He glanced down at a small device on his wrist. "Sally," he said slowly, careful with the words. "That right," she nodded just once. Elias breathed out like someone releasing tension they had been holding for a long time. "All right," he said. "We'll take this slow." Slow, that was not what she expected. He stepped aside and pointed down the hall. "Ship S docked, you'll want to see it." She didn't move. Fear wrapped around her chest like tight cords. Every story she had heard pressed against her thoughts. Humans take, humans command, humans decide. Elias noticed her frozen stance. He frowned, not in anger but confusion. "Hey," he said gently, "you're not cargo." That word hit her harder than a shout. Not cargo. He turned away from her then, exposing his back. He unclipped the plasma rifle and placed it carefully on the floor. Then he did something no one had prepared her for. He knelt. One knee touched the metal floor. His head lowered slightly, eyes not meeting hers. Sally screamed. The cry tore from her throat, sharp and full of terror. In her culture, kneeling meant surrender before execution. It meant a final moment before blood. Lights flashed. Security drones word to life. Market voices rose in alarm. Elias looked up fast. "No, no, hey, it's okay," he said, hands raised, palms open. Sally stumbled backward, breath shaking, tears burning her eyes. "I'm not here to hurt you," Elias said quickly. "I swear it." The drones hovered, scanning. After a moment, they powered down. Sally's cry echoed in the chamber long after it ended. The ship was small. That surprised her too. She expected something massive and cold, like the transport that carried her away from home. Instead, Elia's ship looked worn but cared for. Tools were hung neatly on the walls. A kettle steamed softly in the corner. "This is home," Elia said, "for now." She stood near the door, unsure where to go. He pointed to a seat. "You can sit or not, your choice." Choice, another unfamiliar word. As the ship lifted off, Sally watched the market fade into distant lights. Her hands clenched as stars stretched into lines. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. Elias didn't answer right away. "Frontier world," he said at last. "Name's Haven's Fall." That sounded bad even to her. "It's dangerous," she said. "Yes," Elias replied simply. She waited for more explanation. He gave it. "No one else would go," he said. "Too many old machines, bad storms, no trade routes." "Then why go?" she asked. Elias looked at the stars. "Because if no one goes," he said, "nothing ever changes." Days passed in quiet travel. Elias taught her small things: how to eat human food safely, how to use a tool pad, how to read basic star charts. He never raised his voice, never touched her without asking. At night, Sally listened to the hum of the engines and wondered what kind of being spent 3 credits on someone everyone else abandoned. "One cycle," she asked him. "Why me?" she said. Elias considered the question. "Because you were there," he answered. "Because the contract didn't say you were worthless, it just said you were untested." She looked down. "Untested usually means failure." "Not to humans," he said. "It means potential." The word settled deep inside her. Haven's Fall appeared as a gray-green sphere wrapped in storms. Lightning danced across its surface like scars reopening. Elias checked systems with calm focus. Atmosphere's thin but breathable. Ground readings are unstable. "That sounds bad," Sally said. He smiled faintly. "It is." As they descended, alarms began to chirp. Ancient signals woke beneath the surface. Machines noticed them. Elias' jaw tightened. He adjusted course, shielding Sally's seat with his own body as the ship shook. "You ready?" he asked. She swallowed. "No," he nodded. "Fair answer." The ship slammed into the ground hard but intact. Dust filled the air. For a long moment neither moved. Then Elias unbuckled and stood. He looked back at her. "Stay close," he said. "I'll go first." The hatch opened. Cold wind howled. Metal shapes moved in the distance. Old guardians. Waiting. Elias stepped down onto the soil of a world no one wanted. Behind him, Sally followed, afraid, uncertain, but no longer alone. And somewhere in the silent machines of Haven's Fall, a system marked her as the primary colonist. Target acquired. The world of Haven's Fall was harsher than Sally expected. Its skies were dark, even in the daytime, and streaks of green lightning slashed across the clouds. The soil under their boots was rough, almost glassy, and hummed faintly, as if the ground itself remembered old battles. Elias walked first. Every step was careful. He scanned the horizon constantly, eyes moving faster than any human reflex should allow. Behind him, Sally stumbled but kept up. Her hands shook, but not from fear alone. She had never walked on a world like this. Every sound, the hiss of wind, the groan of metal deep beneath the surface, made her heart race. "Stay close," Elias repeated, though she never needed to be told twice. The wind carried whispers of old machines long forgotten by the galaxy. They had not moved in centuries, but now something in the depths stirred. Small lights flickered beneath the cracked surface, pulsing like distant stars. Sally could feel it in her bones. These machines recognized her, or at least they recognized that she was here. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. Elias stopped for a moment, his eyes scanning a distant ridge. "Because you're the one who has to survive," he said. "I'm just here to make sure you can," she frowned. "I thought humans only care about themselves." Elias laughed softly, a dry, humorless sound. "Some do. Most don't, But those who do, we do it completely. The words sank in. Saley had heard humans described as reckless, greedy, violent. She had never expected someone to risk his life for her, and yet here he was. They reached a narrow valley where the ground dipped sharply. Elias stopped and crouched behind a rock formation. "Sensors are picking up movement," he whispered. "Stay low." Saley pressed herself against the ground. Her pulse thudded loudly in her ears. She had never seen a human move like this, silent, precise, controlled. Elias gestured toward a shadow moving across the valley. It was small, metallic, and creeping like a predator. "The Guardians," he muttered. "They know we're here." For the first time, Saley felt real fear. The stories she had been told about humans being cruel felt less terrifying than the machines before them. They were cold. They were endless. And they would not stop. Elias didn't hesitate. He pulled a small device from his coat. A pulse of light shot from it, temporarily blinding the nearest machine. Sparks flew. The Guardian screeched, metal scraping against metal, and retreated a few steps. "Run!" Elias shouted. Saley's legs moved before her mind could catch up. She stumbled over rocks, dust, and broken metal. Behind her, she heard the machines coming again, faster this time, their metal limbs striking the ground in perfect rhythm. Elias reached her, grabbed her arm, and pulled her behind a larger rock. She gasped for air, heart pounding, as Elias activated another device. A low hum began, vibrating through the valley. The Guardians faltered, confused by the signal. "You have to stay calm," Elias said, eyes never leaving the machines. "Panic makes them faster." Saley swallowed hard and nodded, though it was difficult. Her hands shook so much she could barely hold her small pack. I don't know if I can," she whispered. Elias turned to her. His gaze was steady, unflinching. "Then let me be your strength until you find your own," he said. And somehow that simple sentence made her feel safer. They moved slowly through the valley, always keeping low. The machines were everywhere, silent observers, their glowing red optics scanning for any sign of movement. Elias taught her how to read the faint hums of the machines, how to predict when they would shift or strike. Hours passed. Saley's legs ached, but she began to notice patterns. The machines moved in sequences, following old routines. She started whispering directions to Elias, pointing out where they might be vulnerable. "You're learning fast," Elias said, smiling faintly. She flushed. I want to survive." "That's all we need," he replied. By the time the sun, or what passed for it on Haven's Fall, dipped below the horizon, they had reached a small cave system. Elias checked the entrance, scanning for signs of the machines. The cave was dark, damp, and smelled faintly of minerals and old dust. "This will be our shelter for the night," Elias said. "It's not much, but it's better than being out there." Saley sank to the ground, exhaustion catching up with her. She had never felt anything like the fear and adrenaline she had experienced today. Yet through it all, Elias had kept her safe. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly. Elias knelt beside her. His eyes were calm, unyielding. "Because someone has to," he said. "And because no one should be forced to face this world alone." The simplicity of the statement struck her. It was not heroic. It was not dramatic. It was human. For the first time since leaving her homeworld, she allowed herself to relax a little. Night fell completely, and the cave was dark except for a small fire Elias built from rocks and scavenged fuel. The glow cast shadows on the walls, making the cave feel almost alive. Saley sat close to the warmth, listening to Elias hum a tune she had never heard before. The sound was oddly comforting, like the universe had paused just for them. "You ever scared?" she asked. "All the time," Elias replied without hesitation. "Every mission, every world, every time I step outside my ship. You don't show it. Doesn't mean I'm not scared. Means I've learned how to keep it from controlling me." Saley thought about that. She had been scared her entire life, of leaving home, of humans, of failure. And now, for the first time, she realized fear did not have to mean helplessness. Elias looked at her, noticing the change. "You're stronger than you think," he said. She smiled faintly. "I'm still terrified." "That's fine," he said. "Terrified is the first step to being ready." They ate a meager meal, ration bars and recycled water, but the small comfort of shared food made the cave feel less lonely. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, there was a fragile sense of safety. As the night deepened, Sally felt a strange connection to Elias. Not because of what he had done for her, but because of how he did it. He had not promised to make her safe. He had not promised to fight the machines for her glory. He had acted because it was the right thing to do. Humans were different from everything she had been told. Greedy, yes, reckless sometimes, but capable of something else, something ancient, something that made her chest tighten in awe, courage born from care, not fear. Elias slept lightly, always listening, always ready. Sally watched him, realizing that she had learned something important in just one day. Survival was not just about strength, it was about trust. She had trusted no one before. Now she had no choice. And yet she felt a strange comfort in it. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Outside, shadows moved. The hum of the machines continued, faint but persistent. Suddenly, a loud metallic groan echoed through the cave entrance. Sally froze. Elias was immediately on his feet, eyes scanning. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The shadow of a large guardian machine appeared at the cave's mouth, its glowing optics scanning. It had not detected them yet. Elias whispered instructions and Sally followed, holding her breath. Every movement was deliberate, careful, precise. The machine paused, sensing something. Its head swiveled, red optics glowing. Then slowly it turned and moved past them as if dismissing the cave. Sally exhaled slowly, relief flooding through her. Elias glanced at her. "See, you're learning," he said with a faint grin. She nodded, too tired to speak, but inside a new feeling blossomed. Hope. For the first time, she realized that survival was not about being alone. It was about finding someone who would fight alongside you, someone who would kneel not to dominate but to promise protection. She looked at Elias, and in the quiet of the cave she whispered, "Thank you." He nodded, not saying much. Actions, he believed, spoke louder than words. Outside, the wind howled. The machines waited. But inside the cave, two unlikely companions rested, hearts beating, minds alert, ready for the trials of Haven's fall. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the clouds and storms, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. Dawn came slowly to Haven's fall. The storm clouds above shifted in long, slow waves of gray and green. Lightning flashed occasionally, far off, and thunder rolled in the distance like the growl of an old machine. The cave that had offered some safety during the night now seemed smaller, weaker, under the pale light of the stormy morning. Sally stretched, her body aching from the previous day's ordeal. Every muscle reminded her of how fragile she had felt when the Guardians had nearly found them. But the pain was not entirely unpleasant. Pain meant she had survived. Pain meant she was still learning. Elias stood near the cave entrance, scanning the horizon with a hand shielding his eyes from the flickering light. He never slept deeply, and even in rest, his senses remained alert. "You ready?" he asked, turning to Sally. His voice was calm but carried the weight of expectation. Sally nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She did not feel ready, but she knew there was no other choice. Haven's fall would not wait for anyone to prepare. "Good," Elias said. He gestured to a small ridge ahead. "We need to cross that to reach safer ground. The surface below it is unstable, old ruins, machines still active, and possible collapse." The words made Sally's stomach twist, but Elias only smiled faintly. "Don't think about it too much. Step carefully. Watch me, that's all." They moved slowly across the rocky terrain. Elias took the lead, his movements deliberate. Every footfall was measured. He scanned constantly with a small handheld sensor, listening to the faint hums that whispered across the ground. Sally followed, clutching her pack tightly, trying to mimic his steps. The valley around them was silent except for the hum of the storm above, and then faintly, a low metallic clicking echoed from beneath the rocks. "Stop," Elias whispered. He crouched low, pointing to the ground. The hum grew louder, resonating in the soles of their boots. "What is it?" Saley asked, her voice trembling. "Old guardians, buried here, dormant but still aware. They'll react if we trigger the wrong vibration." Saley swallowed hard. She had learned about humans' courage yesterday, but now she realized it was more than bravery. It was knowledge and control. Elias had seen this danger before. He had calculated their every move. Elias motioned for her to step carefully along the jagged stones. "Follow my steps exactly. Don't rush, don't hesitate." The ridge seemed endless. Each step was a test. Saley felt sweat on her brow, her muscles screaming in protest. But she noticed something. She was starting to see patterns. The Guardians' hums were not random. Their movements were predictable, and with each careful step she felt a little less afraid. Halfway across the ridge, the first Guardian awoke. A metallic arm shot from beneath the stones, scraping across rock with a shrill screech. Elias reacted immediately. He pressed a button on a device strapped to his wrist, and a low pulse shot out. The arm froze, quivering slightly. "Go!" he shouted. Saley ran, following his path, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The ground shook as the Guardian tried to pull itself free. She could see its red optics flickering in confusion. Elias leapt over a sharp edge, landing beside her. Together, they sprinted the final few meters to a safer plateau. Saley collapsed onto the ground, panting. Elias crouched beside her, checking the Guardian's movement. It had returned to dormancy, retreating beneath the rocks, unable to follow them. "You did good," Elias said simply. Saley shook her head. I almost didn't make it." Elias shook his head. "Almost doesn't count. You did, and that's what matters." For the first time, Saley felt a surge of pride. She had survived because she had followed instructions. She had survived because she had trusted a human, and she had survived because she had learned. The plateau led to an ancient structure, half buried in sand and jagged rock. Its metal walls were scratched, pitted, and covered with strange alien markings. Elias examined it carefully, scanning for weak points, old traps, and signs of activity. "This place," he said, "was built long ago by a species we don't know much about. Most explorers avoid it because the Guardians protect it, but it has water, shelter, and tools we can use. If we make it inside, we can rest, resupply, and plan our next move." Saley's eyes widened. Water, shelter, safety. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to hope. Elias crouched by a wall and inspected the markings. "This might be tricky," he muttered. Then, louder, "Stay behind me." The entrance to the structure was a heavy door, sealed by ancient mechanisms. Elias studied the panel, tracing the worn symbols with his fingers. "Some of these old locks respond to weight, some to touch. Let me do the first attempt." He pressed a symbol, then another. The door groaned, then slid open with a reluctant hiss. Inside, the air smelled faintly of minerals and oil. Saley followed, stepping carefully over the threshold. The floor was dusty but solid. Light from the storm outside filtered through cracks in the wall, giving the chamber a pale green glow. "This is it," Elias said. "For now, we're safe." The chamber was not empty. Tools and strange machines littered the floor. Some looked broken, others functional. Elias picked up a small handheld device, testing it. Sparks flew, then died. "Still works," he muttered. "Some of these are hundreds of cycles old, but a little adjustment and they're useful." Saley wandered slowly, examining the walls. Strange markings, symbols she could not read, ran along every surface. They told a story, she realized, a story of creation, of battle, of survival, and now of her and Elias. Elias noticed her pause. "Learning something?" She nodded. "I think they wrote how to survive here, how to avoid the Guardians." Elias smiled faintly. "Good eye. Pay attention. Knowledge is as important as strength here." Sally felt a strange confidence building inside her. The fear that had dominated her life was fading. She was still afraid, yes, but now she had tools, knowledge, and a human who believed in her. That night the storm raged outside, lightning cracking across the sky like gunfire. Inside the chamber, Elias taught her more than survival skills. He taught her how to think like the Guardians, how to anticipate danger, how to remain calm under pressure. Sally struggled at first, misjudging distances and timings, but Elias never yelled or showed frustration. He corrected gently, demonstrating again, letting her try until she succeeded. Hours passed. The storm outside was relentless, but inside they worked, side by side. Sally felt something she had never felt before, pride in her own ability. "You're learning fast," Elias said once again. She smiled faintly. "I'm still terrified." "Good," he replied. "Terrified keeps you alive. Confidence without caution gets you killed." The next morning they faced their greatest test yet. Outside the structure, the ground had shifted overnight. Sand and debris blocked their path, forcing them to move closer to the Guardians' territory. Elias paused, scanning the valley. "The Guardians have noticed our presence more clearly now," he said. "We have to move carefully. One mistake and we may trigger them all." Sally's heart pounded, but she followed his lead. This time, she noticed things Elias had not said. Small vibrations in the ground, subtle flickers in the light, shifts in the air, patterns that told her where the Guardians were moving. "This way," she whispered. Elias followed, eyes wide. For the first time, he let her guide him through the danger. Her instincts, trained only by fear and observation, worked. The Guardians hesitated, then retreated slightly, allowing them to cross safely. Elias looked at her with astonishment. You're incredible," he said. Sally felt a surge of confidence. "I followed you before," she said. "Now I think I can lead." The bond between them shifted subtly. She was no longer just a passenger, a fragile companion. She was a partner. Tested by fear, refined by survival, she had begun to earn her place beside him. By the time they reached the next plateau, exhaustion had set in, but their progress was undeniable. The Guardians no longer seemed threatening, only watchful. Sally had learned how to avoid them, how to predict them, how to stay alive. Elias nodded once. "You've passed your first real test," he said. "The galaxy doesn't give second chances for beginners. Most never survive this long." Sally's chest swelled with a strange mixture of relief and pride. She had survived because she trusted, because she learned, because she had refused to give in to fear. The storm above Haven's Fall was not yet over. There would be more challenges, more machines, more tests. But for the first time, Sally knew something crucial. She was no longer just a victim of circumstance. She was human enough, strong enough to survive. And with Elias by her side, she knew they might even thrive. Haven's Fall was quiet, too quiet. The valley, scarred with the marks of ancient guardians, stretched before Elias and Sally like a frozen battlefield. They had survived the machines, learned their patterns, and grown stronger. Yet Elias knew that survival on this planet was no longer their only concern. The galaxy had noticed. From orbit, sensors aboard distant human ships picked up their signatures. And far beyond, corporations, explorers, and alien governments monitored the planet with interest. A 3-credit contract, long considered meaningless, had turned into a focal point of attention. Elias adjusted the straps of his pack and scanned the horizon. "Something's coming," he said, his voice low but steady. He could feel it in the air, a pressure almost like a heartbeat. Sally looked at him, her brow furrowed. "More guardians?" Elias shook his head. "No, something bigger." Hours later, a flash appeared on the horizon. At first, Sally thought it was lightning. But then she saw the shapes, sleek ships, cutting through the clouds with ease, their hulls glinting in the pale light of the planet. They were not human. Their design was precise, angular, and undeniably hostile. Elias crouched behind a ridge, pulling Sally close. "Galactic enforcement," he muttered. "They've been watching. They know the contract is active. They think they can take you or me or both. Saley swallowed hard. Fear gnawed at her, but she didn't let it show. She had survived guardians, storms, and endless hours of uncertainty. Now, for the first time, she realized that the galaxy itself could be an enemy. "They won't just take us," she said quietly. "They'll try to kill us." Elias nodded. "Yes. But we're not going to let that happen." The first ship landed with a thunderous crash. Metallic legs extended, hammering into the rocky ground. Doors opened and armored figures stepped out, scanning the terrain with precise movements. Their armor was shiny, reflective, and designed to intimidate. Their weapons, though powered down for now, gleamed with menace. Elias rose from his hiding spot, keeping low but visible. "Stay close," he said to Saley. "Remember everything you've learned. Stay calm. Follow my lead." The first officer of the alien squad approached, hand raised. "Human Crow," the voice boomed, distorted by a translator. "Step aside. That colonist belongs to the Galactic Authority. She is to be returned immediately." Elias' expression didn't change. "You're too late," he said. "She isn't yours. You're too far behind to claim her." The alien's optics glowed brighter. "That is irrelevant. Compliance is mandatory. You will surrender." Elias scanned the area, noting rocks, small depressions, and broken machinery around them. "Saley," he whispered, "look for cover. Use what's around you." Saley's heart raced. She could see the soldiers clearly now, armed with energy rifles and strange scanning devices. But she also saw what Elias saw: small rocks that could block lasers, depressions in the ground for hiding, and shadows that could mask their movements. He glanced at her. "You've survived worse. You can do this." Saley nodded, a strange mixture of fear and determination burning in her chest. The alien squad advanced. Elias stepped forward, exposing himself to draw their attention. "Hey," he shouted. "Look at me. I'm the one you want." The squad paused, unsure. Elias used the moment. He activated a small pulse device, sending a brief electromagnetic wave that caused the alien's scanners to flicker. Sparks flew from one of the rifles, causing confusion. Saley moved quickly, following the patterns Elias had drilled into her mind. She used the rocks for cover, creeping closer to a fallen guardian machine. Using the lessons Elias had taught her, she activated a small panel on the machine, sending a low pulse that interfered with the alien's comms for a moment. Elias smiled faintly. "Good, keep it up." The squad tried to regroup, firing a few warning shots. Elias ducked behind a ridge, pulling Saley with him. One of the aliens aimed directly at her, and for a moment she froze. But then she remembered the lessons: timing, observation, patience. She pressed a hidden button on a nearby rock, sending a flash of energy that blinded the alien for just long enough. Elias seized the moment. He sprinted forward, drawing the alien fire toward him, but staying just out of reach. Saley followed, her hands steady, her mind focused. By the time the alien squad realized what was happening, Elias and Saley had reached a more defensible position behind a half-buried guardian. "You're good," Elias whispered, catching his breath. "Better than I expected." Saley shook her head. "I'm just following you." "No," Elias said firmly. "You're thinking, adapting, surviving. That's not following, that's leading." The aliens regrouped, calling for reinforcements, but Elias had a plan. He pulled out a small device, not much bigger than a wrist console. "This is going to get their attention," he said, "but it will also give us a chance to leave." He pressed a button, and the device emitted a loud pulse. The ground trembled as dormant guardians in the distance began to stir, awakened by the signal. Machines that had lain still for centuries now moved, drawn by the pulse's energy signature. The alien squad froze, their focus split between Elias, Saley, and the awakening guardians. Panic rippled through their ranks. Elias seized the moment. "Run!" he shouted. Saley ran beside him, adrenaline surging. They dodged laser fire, leapt over jagged rocks, and ran toward a narrow canyon that would hide them from orbital sensors. The Guardians moved behind them, not attacking, but acting as a wall of protection, blocking the aliens' advance. For the first time, Saley realized something profound. Humans were not just clever with tools. They could manipulate even ancient, powerful machines to survive. Elias glanced at her as they ran. "See, you're not just surviving. You're using the environment, the rules, everything we have. That's human." Saley's chest heaved, but she felt a strange sense of power. She had feared the Guardians, the storms, and now even the galaxy. But with Elias by her side, she was learning to control fear, to turn it into something useful. They reached the canyon, a narrow pass between jagged cliffs. Elias slowed, scanning the route ahead. "Almost there," he said. "Once we're through, they can't follow easily. We'll rest, resupply, and plan." Saley looked back. The aliens were still advancing, but the Guardians now formed a natural barrier. The humans had learned to use the planet itself as a weapon. "You really think they'll leave us alone?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "Not likely, but we're no longer just survivors. We're a force they can't predict. And humans are the most unpredictable of all." For the first time, Saley felt a spark of pride. She was no longer just a frightened alien, carried along by someone else's courage. She was learning, adapting, and becoming part of something greater. They moved cautiously through the canyon, finally finding a hidden plateau where the wind's roar was muffled by the cliffs. Elias crouched, checking the sensors. "Safe for now," he said. Saley sank to the ground, exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it," she whispered. Elias shook his head with a small smile. "No, you did it, I just showed you how." Her eyes widened. "Me?" "Yes," he said firmly. "You faced machines, storms, and the galaxy itself. You adapted. You survived. And soon you'll be leading others. That's what humans do. We survive, we adapt, we lead. That's why the galaxy underestimates us, and why they will keep learning the hard way." Outside, the wind howled through the canyon, carrying the distant sound of the aliens regrouping. But inside, Saley felt warmth, safety, and a growing sense of strength. She had survived the trial of the galaxy itself, and she knew the next challenge would come. But for now, she had learned something that no training or machine could teach. Humans never give up. Humans never follow blindly. Humans fight not for glory, but for those they care about. Saley had survived because Elias had trusted her, guided her, and believed in her. But more importantly, she had begun to believe in herself. And that, she realized, was more powerful than any weapon the galaxy could wield. The wind had stopped. The storm clouds over Haven's Fall drifted apart, revealing faint streaks of distant stars. The plateau where Elias and Saley rested felt strangely calm, though the scars of battle and the hum of dormant guardians reminded them that peace was temporary. Elias crouched, checking the sensors one last time. "No sign of the alien fleet in the immediate area," he said. "They're regrouping, probably calling for reinforcements." Saley wiped dust from her arms, muscles stiff from the past days. She looked out over the canyon below and realized something she had never understood before. This barren, storm-lashed world, abandoned by most of the galaxy, was now theirs, at least for the moment. "They think this is just a small mission," Elias said, breaking her thoughts. "They don't understand humans. They never do." Saley turned to him. "Why do you care so much about me? About this contract?" Elias looked at her, his expression calm but intense. "Because it's not about a contract. It's about responsibility. It's about doing what's right. You have a right to survive. I'm human. I can't ignore that." Saley felt a warmth in her chest. Humans, she realized, were different from what her people had taught her to expect. They were capable of courage and care in ways that other species rarely showed. The plateau trembled slightly and Elias stiffened. "They've arrived," he said. Through the thinning clouds, distant ships could be seen descending. Not a single human ship, only alien enforcement craft. Saley felt a flicker of fear, but this time it was different. She had survived storms, machines, and even previous attacks from this very fleet. She had learned to think, to observe, to act, and she trusted Elias. "Remember everything," he whispered. "Use the terrain, use the guardians, and most importantly, believe that we can win." Saley nodded. Her heart pounded, but she felt a strange calm. Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear. Courage was acting even when fear is present. The alien ships landed on the plateau's edges. Their figures moved precisely, armored soldiers scanning for any sign of human interference. Elias stepped forward, placing himself between Saley and the approaching force. "You will surrender the colonist immediately," the lead officer demanded. "Resistance is illegal. Compliance is mandatory." Elias shook his head. "You're too late. You've underestimated humans for the last time. She is not yours. You have no claim here." The officer's optics glowed brighter. "We have authority. You cannot oppose us." Elias smiled faintly. "Authority doesn't win battles. Action does, and humans act when it matters." Saley watched as he reached into his pack and pulled out a small device. It hummed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Elias activated it. Instantly, signals pulsed outward, awakening the guardians of Haven's Fall. Machines that had slumbered for centuries began to stir, surrounding the plateau like silent sentinels. The alien soldiers froze, their scanners picking up the movement. The guardians did not attack, but their presence alone created a wall of intimidation. Elias looked at Saley. "Now," he whispered, "we move." They ran together toward a narrow canyon. The alien squad tried to follow, but the guardians blocked their advance. Elias and Saley used every trick they had learned: hidden paths, shadows, the vibrations of the ground, and the terrain itself. Saley took the lead in some sections, pointing out dangers and predicting movements of the guardians. For the first time, she realized she was not just following. She was part of the strategy, part of the solution. Elias glanced at her with quiet pride. "You've become more than just a partner. You're human enough to survive, clever enough to fight, and brave enough to lead." Saley felt a surge of confidence. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the doubt, they were gone, replaced with determination. They would survive. And if necessary, they would triumph. The aliens attempted a last-ditch attack, firing energy blasts down the canyon. Elias and Saley ducked behind rocks. Saley's hands moved instinctively, activating small devices and creating brief pulses that disrupted the alien weapons. She had learned from Elias, but now her intuition guided her actions. The alien squad hesitated, confused by the humans' unpredictable movements and the Guardians' interference. Elias used this moment to leap onto higher ground, signaling to Saley to follow. Together, they reached the top of a ridge overlooking the alien fleet. From this vantage point, the entire battlefield was visible. The Guardians spread below, forming a line of defense. The alien soldiers were trapped, unable to advance without risking the machine's wrath. Elias looked at Saley. "This is it," he said. "We don't attack, we survive. We show them that humans can't be predicted, and when they understand that, they leave." Saley nodded. She felt fear still, but it was sharp, precise, and controlled. She was ready. Hours passed. The aliens tried to communicate, sending signals, demanding surrender, attempting intimidation. Elias responded with calm defiance. Every pulse from the Guardians reinforced their position. Every clever maneuver by Saley confused and slowed the attackers. Finally, the alien officer spoke again, voice trembling through the translator. You cannot resist. Leave or we will escalate force." Elias shook his head. "You've learned nothing. Humans survive, humans adapt, and humans protect what matters." The aliens hesitated. They had expected a frightened, fragile colonist and a lone human. They had not expected clever tactics, guardians under control, and humans acting with intelligence and courage. Saley realized something extraordinary. Her species had taught her to fear humans. But these humans, Elias and herself, now acting as one, were different. The galaxy's rules did not bind them. They made their own. By the time night fell, the alien squad began to retreat. They recognized the futility of the attack. Guardians and terrain made pursuit impossible, and the humans had demonstrated resilience and intelligence beyond their expectation. Elias and Saley stood side by side, watching the ships leave. The plateau was quiet again, except for the faint hum of dormant machines. Saley turned to Elias. We did it," she said, barely believing the words herself. Elias nodded. "Yes, we did it together." The calm of the night gave her time to reflect. She had been called many things, untested, fragile, and even worthless. And yet she had survived every trial, storms, guardians, and even the galaxy itself. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. This contract, it wasn't about price. It was about courage, responsibility, and trust. That's the bond humans value, not ownership, not power, duty. Protection, survival, that's what makes us human, Saley smiled. "I think I understand now." "You do," Elias said, "and now you'll teach others someday. You'll survive in ways no one else expects. You'll show the galaxy that humans and those who trust them cannot be underestimated." Days later, the two prepared to move deeper into Haven's Fall. Supplies were scarce, but their knowledge had grown. They had learned the rhythm of the planet, the movements of the guardians, and the patterns of the storms. Most importantly, they had learned to trust each other and themselves. From orbit, other species took note. A simple 3-credit contract had led to something remarkable, a human and a once fragile colonist surviving where the galaxy assumed failure. The lesson spread quickly. Humans were not easily defeated. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and protective of those they valued. Saley looked at Elias as they moved forward. "Do you think the galaxy will ever understand?" Elias chuckled softly. "Not fully, and that's fine. They don't need to. We just need to survive. We just need to be human." The stars above Haven's Fall glimmered faintly. For the first time, Saley felt the thrill of being alive. She had faced fear, danger, and doubt, and she had grown stronger. She realized that a bond was not about money, ownership, or authority. A bond was trust, responsibility, and courage. Elias knelt once more, not as a symbol of submission but as a promise. A promise that no matter what came next, he would stand with her and she would stand with him. Saley did not cry this time. She smiled. The plateau, the guardians, the storms, the galaxy itself, they were all witnesses to something new. Humans were not just survivors. Humans were a force that protected, adapted, and endured. And she, once untested and fragile, had become a part of that force. The galaxy had underestimated them. That would be its greatest mistake. For Elias and Saley, the stars were no longer distant. They were theirs, and together they would face whatever came next.